Hi, I have a question. Does the world need another person that uploads video on YouTube about startups, software, ideas that are changing the world? Probably not, but I'm still gonna do it. So my name is Shubham and I work with early stage startups. I'm product role, growth roles. That's what I do, and I have this peculiar habit that whenever I feel stuck and about something, anything related to work or something that's making curious, so I reach out to people and try to learn from them. I thought, why not just put it on YouTube? So recently, I reached out to Patrick Coleman and I interviewed him. So Patrick Coleman is a BizOps growth leader, and recently he worked with Replit, and he did some great work there. He 5x revenue. He grew and launched a product there. He helped with the Series B 80 million funding, and I think he delved in every department you can think of. I'll put a pic here. You can read it. And currently, he's working with Use Interval. Use Interval is a way that you can build tools using your backend code without the need of any front end code, and it allows you to reuse your code base. And it's great for building internal tools, like you want your internal accounting software that a non-tech people can use. So it's a great way to do that. And yeah, you can check that out. I'll probably put a link in the description. Yeah, that's it. Here is the audio recording of the interview I did. Hope you learned something.
Okay, folks, whoever is joining in, I'll give you like a brief what we are about to do in this session. And if you're not able to hear me, you can just, give like a down emoji or something, and you can just message me. If not, let's start. Uh, so this session is about like we have a conversation with Patrick Coleman. He is a growth and ops leader. He started his career in investment banking and then started out to work in startups. And he went on to with People Grove and Replete. And he was the 11th employee at Replete, and he made like a huge impact. He 5x the revenue, and he helped in Series B. But I think I'll stop here, and I think we can start. And basically, the aim of this session is to learn as much as possible to how to grow these 0 to 1 spaces and what it takes actually, how it actually is, and not really, reading about it in a blog, but like talking to the person and learning from it. Yeah. So, welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Gudar. Really appreciate the kind words and excited to share a little bit about my path and what I've learned over the years.
Great, great, great. So you recently, okay, let's start with something light. I think you recently went on a break, and as far as I know, you're really into traveling and exploring new places. So if you can talk a little bit about that, like, like how does traveling come on to like, what it means to you?
Yeah, I think traveling is really important. I think meeting other folks from different places and different cultures, far away from home or even close to home, I think really kind of expands your mind, makes you a more empathetic person, and is just a lot of fun. Um, so yeah, after winding things up at Replit, I took a little bit of time off and traveled around the U.S. to see some friends, and then I went to Poland for a friend's wedding, and went to Croatia, Berlin, and Geneva to see some friends as well, and have done some other longer trips over the years, and highly recommend to anyone who's able to make it happen.
Great, great, great. And like, interacting with like different culture from yours or different language, does it allow you to like, push yourself and learn something from other cultures?
Definitely, I think it's always fun to be kind of meeting new people and learning new things. I've always really enjoyed studying foreign languages over the years, and studied Spanish for a long time in school, and have been learning Japanese and more recently Korean. But I've had some really fun adventures on my travels where I did not speak the local language, and we were trying to communicate over Google Translate or things like that.
Got it, got it. Sounds interesting. Okay, cool. So I just want to start of course, you started out your career as an investment banker, and then you switched or like made like a conscious choice to work for startup. So if you can talk about that time when you finally took that leap of faith, like from going from investment banking to working from People Grove. I'm assuming People Grove wouldn't be like a big company back then. So if you can talk about the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was one step between investment banking um, and working for People Grove as a startup. And Girdar, I'm getting a bit of feedback too. But I ended up working for a mid-sized tech company called Market Track after investment banking and before going into startups, which is so I went from a very, very large company, Bank of America, to like about a 500-person company that was private equity backed and growing quickly. And I started to like the job a lot more than the investment
Okay,
banking job there.
okay,
And I had a really kind of broad variety of experience in an operations and strategy role. And then after that, I was like, I want to go smaller. I think this is a good point in my life to take a risk, and if it doesn't work out, I can always bounce back and go work for a larger company again. But when I did go work for People Grove, I joined as the first non-founding hire, and so I was employee number 5, and I just loved it, and have been doing startups ever since.
okay, okay, great. So, I think if you can like describe how like an early stage startup is, like of course you were the employee number 4, and how it differs to like an established company like Market Track and Bank of America, how it differs from it. If you can, describe how the first few days were. Well, was it full of confusion? Was it full of excitement? Maybe some, anecdotes like this happened or this happened. If you can describe it.
Sure. Yeah, I think at at Bank of America, kind of starting out, I think there's a very much a culture of like everything needs to be like very perfectly done. And if you are presenting slides to a company to recommend that they do a merger or something like that, and on slide 10 there's a missing period on the footnote of the slide, you're going to get chewed out. Whereas at a startup, like that level of perfectionism is actually like directly at odds with having success as a company. So if everything is totally perfect, um, there's a good chance that the company will move too slow to be successful. And there's kind of a lot of talk out there about this, and Paul Graham has written about it and things like that. But the primary competitive advantage of startups is their speed to execute. And so in the early days of People Grove, the most important thing for us was like to go, and we were kind of bootstrapping at that point too. We'd raised a really, really small kind of pre-seed check, enough to just like extend a little bit of runway. And every sales contract that we got in was like important to the continued existence of the business. So we were just like hustling around, going to different conferences, trying to close deals, and I was like getting the customers launched, to the point that like to save costs, we would all like share a hotel room together when we were traveling to these different conferences.
Okay.
And we were like hustling to build the product, like as we were closing deals. So there were some really rough edges in the early days, but enough of the core functionality, the MVP was working well, that customers really loved it, and were willing to put up with some of the rough edges. Whereas if I was in a kind of large company environment, I don't think we would have put something out if those rough edges were not polished. But so much of the learning happens when you're just working with customers and iterating and having that really tight feedback loop.
Okay, okay. Got it, got it. Sounds really interesting and exciting time. Also, one thing is knowing that you like the last 2 companies you have worked is like have been in edtech. So was it like a conscious choice that you enjoy this space, or is just like happened like some people and that's why you went for them?
Um, yeah, well, having worked in finance for a little while, I wanted to work on something that was a little bit more social impact. So it was really exciting to move out to San Francisco, which is where there's a lot of education, technology, like startups and activity, and it felt really rewarding to work in a company where I was helping folks at People Grove like find their paths, find their careers, find their passions through mentorship and getting to work with teachers and students and educators, and then to carry that on to Replit too was really rewarding as well.
Great, great. Sounds great. And then how did Replete happen? Because it's a very aggressive on, I mean, it's a very new space. So how did you end up joining them and like became the 11th employee, 11ish?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I had been traveling just prior to COVID starting, and I came back to the States and was looking to find a new job. And I was talking to one of the investors in People Grove, who I was still friends with, and um, I was kind of mentioning some of the things that I was excited about, and I wanted to continue doing education technology stuff. And they were running through some of the portfolio companies, and they mentioned Replit, and they had this kind of really tall order for like an early business hire in terms of all the different types of experience they wanted somebody to have. And I was, well, I've done all of these things, and I think I was able to do that because I took these really kind of early, like broad roles before that. And if I had like come straight out of investment banking, I don't think would have been able to line up the opportunity. And the other thing that got me really excited is like as a kid growing up, I had done a lot of coding. I like spent a summer making a video game for our school game website. I took as many comp sci classes as I could in high school, and I took a couple in college. And it was just a lot of fun for me. So when I met Amjad and started talking to him about the company and the vision, like it really resonated, and just something that I wanted to spend more time working on.
Got it, got it. So, one thing that I've noticed is that one thing that gets, of course, neglected from outside is that these kind of roles are like extremely multifunctional, and they do involve like a certain kind of hand-holding and micromanagement. So, is this something that people can prepare for, or is it like something that people do on the job and they just learn and implement here and there? Because from your tweet, we can see that you dabbled in around 10 areas, from sales to support, marketing, legal, everything. So, like, how did you manage to do this, or does it come from like innate thing, like, hey, I want to do this?
Yeah, you do end up having to have like very kind of shallow knowledge in all of these different areas. And I did study business undergrad, and I studied finance specifically, but took all these broad business classes. Um, a lot of the background knowledge was helpful, and a lot of the financial analysis that I did early in my career like helped me kind of think about like how businesses run, like how businesses make money, how things flow together, like what is driving your costs? Is it people? Is it cost of goods sold? What are your margins? Things like that, which was a helpful framework to think about things. But all of the tactical and practical skills from sales, marketing, like project management, just like general organization, all of that was learned in the job. And the banking experience was really great for just like general hard work and diligence and attention to detail. But the real learning started to happen afterwards. And I think some of the most valuable learning I've had since graduating was in sales. And I started to get really good sales training at Market Track, although I was doing more kind of like management and strategy and sales operations. And then at People Grove, I started to actually do some sales myself, got more training and mentorship through some consultants that we work with. And then at Replit, obviously, did a lot of selling. And it's kind of crazy to me that like very few business schools around the country like even teach sales. And I have seen people in finance and other fields like hit a wall in their career where they can't progress further because they don't have that sales experience. So I think to some extent you have to learn it by doing. I think it's probably similar for engineering and other disciplines, but having that kind of initial knowledge and framework definitely helped.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I think the past experience did really help, and of course, your own curiosity to learn. It was like mix of both things.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And one thing that I've noticed is that Replete in this particular space is one of these few edtech startups that also has like a hardware angle to it. It's creating these in-browser experiences for the IDE, and it's kind of replacing, not really replacing, but combining all these experiences. So you don't really have to maybe like deploy your code somewhere else. You can just run like an end-to-end thing within it. So I just want to know what kind of like effort goes into like hardware part of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, Replit is an incredibly technically innovative company, like both on the infrastructure side as well as the product application side of things, and I think a lot of businesses don't have to be like really at the cutting edge of new technology, and you can still have a really successful business. And People Grove, for example, we weren't doing new engineering innovations, but we had some really exciting innovations in the realm of running mentoring programs effectively. So it was a lot of process and culture and change management for universities, and helping them kind of get these mentoring programs off their own. And this was very innovative, but the engineering and the technology was not our competitive advantage. Our competitive advantage was the quality of the mentoring programs that we were helping the university run. Whereas Replit on the other side, the technology and the technological innovation is the product and is the competitive advantage for our business. And I've spent a little bit of time coding really simple apps, and trying to roll it myself, from doing a getting a little DigitalOcean droplet, and doing a Node backend, and writing some of the front end code and things like that, and managing the server with Nginx. And there's all of these pieces when you're building applications that require tons of knowledge. And the beautiful thing about Replit is that it handles all of that infrastructure piece for you. And this is why things like serverless are really exciting on the professional side of things. For Replit, I think for coding education, even something as basic as just getting your development environment set up to write your first line of code is an incredibly high barrier to entry for folks. And the beautiful thing about Replit is you just immediately step in and start writing code, and you actually get to be creative from day one, which really improves the quality of learning, how much students get excited and get engaged. And a lot of folks that don't traditionally see themselves as engineers or coders have a lot of success with Replit, and persist. And that's really important and really, I think, incredible. And as Replit continues to get more and more powerful, I think that is and is going to continue to be relevant for professional engineers too, that are deploying and making money from the applications that they build, because for a lot of applications, you don't need to be really futzing around with the lower level kind of technologies, and especially to get an MVP out to get initial traction. And things change obviously when you scale, but to get something out there fast, I think there's very few things that are as powerful and capable as Replit.
Got it. And yes, of course, the part that you were partially mentioning is that Replete has actually enabled very young coders to get on the platform, learn quickly, and also start earning money from it. And I think that's like one of the early stories was I heard that some 16-year-old coder way back in in rural India learned coding from Replete and earned money from it. So these are the kind of transformational stories that like you heard from Replete? Were these kind of stories like coming in early days, or like did they start only later on? And did these stories like really motivated, like all the early team members?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were seeing variations of this story kind of throughout Replit existence, and I joined a couple years like into the company too, and saw a ton of growth while I was there. So there were definitely some stories that predate my time, but even some like really exciting new developments for Replit, like the community and our forum and other things like that, like came out of like people hacking the products to do things because we had built such a powerful general purpose computing platform. They were like hacking and pushing the very boundaries of what was possible on Replit. And then because we kept responding to that user feedback and we kept building and improving the application, like people just kept being able to do more and more. And when people started, like there was a student who was like building really cool and powerful applications on Replit rather than like studying for like the IIT entrance exams. And his like parents were getting on his case, and like I think Amjad like reached out to the parents and was like, "Hey, your kid is going to be okay." Like we hired some folks like as interns in high school. We like had some folks like drop out of college. Like the the learning that people were getting on the job, and just like by building and being part of the Replit community, whether they're employed by us or just using the platform, was phenomenal. So seeing these success stories was really really great. And I remember there was a time too where we saw someone had built a really popular multiplayer game on Replit, and then they built a really like simple like pre-roll ad into their into their application, and they were on our like plan, our hacker plan for individuals, and were like paying us like a small amount of money, and we're making like I think it was like 10x that in a month. And when we first saw that, like the whole like just the buzz and excitement on the team was so strong. So like getting to see these like transformative moments in people's lives, and I think Amjad always felt a really strong kind of passion that all of us on the team shared about like, you shouldn't have to live in, one of a very few cities around the world. You shouldn't need access to really powerful and expensive computers to be able to access the internet economy. Should be something that is available to everyone. So I think like computing has both the potential to be really democratizing, and also to like be incredibly empowering, and to let people build things in a really resource efficient way, and have a ton of success and make a lot of money.
Got it, got it. Sounds really interesting. I think I have just like a couple of more questions, and then if
Sure.
anyone has any questions from like listeners, I think there's two of them. If you have any questions, you can really ask. You can just have to like raise hand, and then I can come on up as like a speaker. So if any of you has, so let me know. Okay. So one of the last questions that I have is, you recently started like angel investing as well. So how has been that part of the journey, and what has been like your choice of companies? What has been your approach in general?
Yeah, so I was lucky. People Grove had an exit earlier in the year. So certainly, I think when I joined the company, I was like much more excited about like the mission than any possible economic returns. But it was certainly validating many years later to get a big check in the mail. And then with that, I decided I wanted to start like angel investing to because I love being part of early teams so much. Like helping other people kind of have that success. And having been around the block a couple times now, I'm still learning a ton. Wanting to share some of that like knowledge with other folks. So that sort of like was the motivation behind angel investing. And obviously, I hope that I make good money from these, but highly risky investment class, and it takes a long, long time to realize returns. So I think if the only reason that you're doing this is to make money, it's a it's a tough way to do it, but I have I've had a lot of fun with it. I've only got, I think, maybe like 5 or 6 companies that I've written small angel checks for, and it's really been kind of a diverse set of companies across different industries and things like that. I'm still kind of wanting to get a sense of sort of where I feel like I want to focus deeper. So I think going a little bit broader at the start has been great. But all of the companies that I've talked to have been interested in like having me on as an angel investor so that they can talk about ops and growth and things like that. And I'll get to have conversations like with the founders, like when they hire like heads of ops or early growth folks, like have had calls and conversations with these folks, or people will text me or send me emails. Um, and it just brings me a lot of joy to be like helping others in the space to figure things out. And I think the world really needs more entrepreneurship and more innovation and things like that. So it's a small way to kind of give back and help the next kind of generation of entrepreneurs, like which I'm still pretty young, but to help the next kind of iteration of folks like be successful. And that's sort of what motivated me to want to get on the call with you too, and kind of share some of these thoughts. Hopefully there's something in here that's relevant and helpful for others.
Yeah, of course, at the first interaction, I was also like, a bit surprised that you were there to, help others. It came out very, like, it wasn't like natural to me. Okay, yeah, someone's there to help you out. So yeah, it was very apparent that you do want to help out people. Also, I just want to ask that, are you particularly like interested in the Indian startup scene? Like, if you're following it, like, what has been your observation, if any? If not, you can just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think before I answer that too, just on the topic of like sort of helpfulness, I think like one of the things that really got me excited about Silicon Valley and moving out here is that like there is this culture of helpfulness and cooperation. And when I like moved to Silicon Valley without any experience in startups, without any real like marketable skills necessarily, like people still wanted to talk to me, and people were still willing to like make introductions and answer my questions. Folks with a lot of experience, folks with little experience, like it was this really sort of like helpful environment. And I sort of contrast that with the experience in finance and in New York, where really hardly anybody wanted to talk to you unless like you had already proven yourself doing something. And maybe it was just like the fact that like it's a more mature industry and that like kind of been around for hundreds of years, like finance in New York, but the and then there's a lot of people that are wanting to break in, so you sort of have to put up some walls. But I didn't really ever feel like as great in that environment as I did in Silicon Valley. And I think like that's sort of there's a reason all I think of like the tech innovation is like happening, or was historically like principally like happening in the Bay Area. And I think like a lot of that is this culture of like people helping each other around, people moving around, people bringing ideas, and like and the whole startup ecosystem, and like the comfort with which people are like, it's okay to fail, it's okay to pick yourself back up, and like try something out, and like you just keep learning and keep getting better. And I think that's sort of like technological optimism and like growth mindset is something that is like really prevalent in Silicon Valley that I did not see so much in, say, finance in New York. But then on the topic of like Indian startups, I'd say I'm not following the space as closely, but I am really like excited about like India and the like economic potential of the Indian subcontinent too. I think People Grove had a large team in India, and I was lucky to get to go out there to Mumbai and spend some time and meet the team. And they showed me the local culture, and like, we got food. We went to like a cricket batting cage. I went to like a local temple with one of my coworkers. They like cooked food for us in their home, and just like and then I had a friend get married in Bangalore, so I spent a little bit of time there. And I did a meditation retreat in Bangalore as well, and I met a lot of really great people at that retreat, local folks from Bangalore, and just the kind of buzz and excitement and energy and innovation, like everything I kind of see coming out of like the Indian startup scene is like really like exciting and impressive to me, and I'm eager to see what happens, and hopefully I'll have the opportunity to like invest in some really successful Indian startups in the future.
Okay, okay. Sounds great. Sounds great. So what's one last question is that
Mm.
you have become like a kind of an expert or leader at ops operations part, and generally what I've noticed is that startups kind of neglect that part, like operations. Of course, coders get a lot of attention, growth gets a lot of attention, but operations, keep running things at their optimum level, it kind of gets neglected. So have you kind of noticed that, or what has been your experience with like managing operations at startups?
Yeah, I think the tough thing about like ops at startups is that at a really early stage, you have to have really broad experience, or if you don't come in with that experience, you have to like pick it up really fast. Whereas at a later company, what you might call ops at a startup are like really distinct, separate disciplines. Like finance is actually like rather different than accounting. Legal, like totally separate thing. Like HR and recruiting are like totally different, and like the type of kind of people that are traditionally like successful in a recruiting role, it's like much more of a sales role. The people that are like successful in an HR role, like it's much more kind of like building organizations and like making sure like people are like having their most success. So like all of these sort of like what you might call just like ops for all of it at a startup are these like different disciplines later on that require very different sort of like modes of thought and skill sets and things like that. And the tough thing about startups is that each of these things on their own doesn't take up enough time for it to be a full-time job. So like when I first joined Replit, for example, like one of the couple early things that I did was like get some like HR and like onboarding like processes like up and running a little bit better. Like moving from our like seed stage accountant to like a Series A accountant, and a Series A accountant is like, which was an external firm, is very different than a Series B accountant too. But we like picked somebody that was like stage appropriate and right, and like started like getting more consistent monthly reporting that we could like share with our investors. I built a quick financial model, sort of very similar to the types of templates that I was using back in my banking days. So that knowledge was pretty valuable. Um, and and then like kind of revamp some of the recruiting processes. And you can kind of pick up all of these things, and you start to become more valuable the more years that you do this. But in the early days too, and in areas where as the company was getting bigger, I was like finding myself out of depth. We like outsourced or worked with consultants on a lot of work. So like we brought in a part-time consulting CFO for a while. We ended up hiring him full-time. It's amazing. We ended up hiring like a general counsel, like had worked with like different law firms for different areas. Like one of the big projects that I worked on at Replit was like a big overhaul of our like educational and privacy and terms of service like policies, to make sure that we were like compliant with all of the educational law in different countries and like international privacy law. And I didn't know anything about this really like going in, and had to learn all of it as I was going, but had like some great kind of law firms that we had worked with, and there are all of these like kind of communities. So there's a group called the Operators Guilds that like focuses on like finance and ops. That's like really fantastic. And I leaned heavily on that group. There's one called Startup Experts that's like sort of HR and ops and a little bit of recruiting stuff too. And that community is really great for these folks. There's another community called the Renaissance Collective that is like focused on more of like the sort of just generalist ops folks, and like finding these different kind of professional communities. You have this like wealth of knowledge. So I'd be like, hey, I'm evaluating a vendor for, I don't know, like everything from like a CRM to like, expense management software or whatever it happens to be. And I'd be like looking through the forums and be like, okay, what did people use in the past? Who did people like? I talked to some people like I called up some other startups and be like, what do you think about this accountant? And I don't think I would have been able to have the success that I had, and to help the businesses that I was helping have their success at like People Growth and Replit without having access to these communities, getting the shared knowledge from people that had already been kind of through it. So a bit of a long answer, but hopefully that kind of provides some additional kind of clarity on like what ops means at a startup, and like how to sort of like give yourself a bit of a sort of leg up if anybody's finding themselves in this role without having done it before.
Got it, got it. So community like really helps out when it comes to like multidisciplinary things, let's say.
100%, yeah, and I think just sort of like trusting yourself that like, if you do find yourself in this role, like you will learn all of this stuff to the point that you need to, and if the company is really successful, you may, I think people talk a lot about like sort of you want to automate yourself out of a job, or you want to like grow yourself out of a job, and I think like for me in this sort of like early stage ops focused role, like as the companies I work for get more and more successful, like at People Grow for a while I was like managing sales, and I had like never done that before. I'm like, we started having more success, so it was like time to hire a real VP of sales and like a real VP of customer success, which I had done before. So you sort of like you can find yourself like growing the businesses to a point where you're like almost putting yourself out of a job, but like the companies end up, if that is happening, the companies are becoming very successful, like you will like have financial success from that. And then I think like as much as possible, like sort of like finding a new focus area for yourself. So like at People Grow, for example, I did like customer success for a year and a half, and then I did like sales and event marketing for a year and traveled a lot. And then I did like finance and HR for my final year there. So like find yourself a new kind of role or focus, or like kind of move on to the next opportunity, and like sort of as gracefully as possible manage those transitions. I think is kind of how to think about that too.
Got it, got it. Sounds very interesting. So just one last question from my side is that, of course, working with startup is not like everything is not bright and everything is not good. Sometimes, of course, recent news is about like layoffs, and sometimes people don't really have like good experience working with startups. And if that happens, like what advice do you want to give them? Like how do they bounce back? Uh, and sometimes it's like the mistake of the market. Sometimes the company is not good. Sometimes factors don't really work out. It's like a very precarious field. There is high ups and deep down. So what is your take on this? Like,
Yeah, I feel like there are these like cliches out there. I've seen like people post about this on Twitter and things like that, where like yourself and your health is the most important thing. Like family is the next most important, and then like work after that. And I think there's a David Foster Wallace quote that says like kind of the older you get, like the more truth these basic cliches take on, and I think that's some real wisdom there too. But I think like sort of inevitably in your career, like you're going to see some success and you're going to see some failure, and you're going to have some incredible highs and you're going to have some real lows. You're going to have days where you're like, popping the champagne and celebrating. You're going to have days where you like took some gut punches. And you're probably going to like do some things that you're really proud of. You're probably going to do some things that you regret. And I think the best thing you can do with all of this is like sort of as much as possible, like try to be kind to yourself, try to be kind to others. So some of the things that I've sort of found helpful, like, I've been seeing a therapist for many years, which is like great for me. I don't know, I've got a meditation practice. It's been helpful. I try to eat reasonably healthy. Try not to drink too much, although definitely don't totally abstain. And I, try to exercise on a regular basis. It's really like sort of basic stuff, but I think all of this kind of helps you to sort of like take care of your personal, like physical and psychological, emotional health. because you're going to have really high highs and you're going to have really high lows. And it sucks. Yeah. When layoffs come or like, whatever happens. But I think the exciting thing about startups too is that like, every time there's like a big layoff, like the list of all of those employees that are getting laid off gets passed around the bay, and like people are really eager to go hire those folks. So compared to other industries, I think in startups, like it's really easy to bounce back. And there's and I sort of mentioned before too, like there's a culture of like acceptance of like failure, and I think just like kind of keep stepping back up to the plate, I think is something that's like really, really kind of admirable, and folks appreciate the experience that you get learning from failure. There's sort of like a truism among like venture capitalists too, that they really like to invest in like second or third time founders who have like had a failure under their belt. So I think there's I think there's as tough as things can get in the markets. I don't know if we're in a recession right now or about to be in one, but as tough as things can get, like understanding that, taking care of yourself and your family and your friends, and be ready for things to inevitably turn the corner and for the market to pick back up and step up again and give it another swing, I think is best advice I can give in that area.
Okay, sounds great. I think I'm at the end of my questions. If anyone has any questions, let me know. You can request. It's, I think, if you click on the icons on the right bottom towards the left. So if there is, I think I'll wait for 2 minutes. If not, I think we can end the session. Okay, cool. Actually, the one thing is that I think the couple of communities that you have mentioned, like Operators Guild and Startup Experts, if you can, share these links with me, I'll definitely share them on Twitter as well. I think it can help other people out.
Definitely, yeah. And Renaissance Collective is the other one. I'll send you those links so you can share them around. Big fan of all of these communities. So whatever you find yourself kind of focusing on, there are some great communities out there in those specific areas.
Okay, cool. So Patrick, I think I'm at the end of the session. If you have any thoughts, you can share them on now, or I think we can close it.
I think that's it. Good. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me to do this, and yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for your time. I think we can do something similar, maybe in the future.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you all for the listeners. Bye.
Thanks.